kind of it's a long story, but I'll just kind of highlight it, I guess. I don't know. It's a story about the crows were they were camped over by Pryor, and back in those days, you know, they have to move every few days, and this was a time when they were moving to their winter. They wintered on the west side of the Bighorns, and so they were going through the gap. And at that time, they didn't have horses yet, and so they were walking in there. They used travoy on their dogs. They'd attach their poles to the dogs, and the dogs would drag their goods, and so it was a long line of people walking, following each other through the gap. And while they were traveling, you know, it wasn't a fast pace or anything. It was a slow procession, and here a deer ran through the procession, and a dog that was carrying a little boy tore after that deer. And so then the parents were just frantic, and the men started chasing after the dog to retrieve their little boy. And gosh, they couldn't catch up with him, and so the procession went on, and the family and they stayed back, and they sent out people to look for that dog that was carrying the boy, and they couldn't. After several days, they just couldn't find him, and so finally, I don't know how long until they finally gave up, and they went to catch up with the tribe. And way later, they'd go by that gap, and they'd always remember that this was where we lost our baby. And so this one time they were down camped down below the gap there, probably close to where the Pryor community is now. I don't know if they were that far, but they were camped down there along the river or the creek, And so a group of hunters went up, and they were hunting in the mountains there. And here they were up on top, and they there was 2 or 3 of them, and they were on the edge of the at the top, looking down, probably where the riverbed or the creek bed is. They were looking down, and here they saw movement down there, and here it was a man, and he was carrying a full carcass, a full elk, and he was going along, and then he kind of disappeared, and they kind of asked each other, did you see that person? Did you see him? He was carrying an elk, and if you've ever seen an elk, he's larger than a horse. And here this boy, this man, he was carrying this elk on his shoulder, and he was running like he was carrying something light. So the next day or so, they decided, let's go see, and they kind of wanted to see if they could spot that person. And sure enough, I don't know if it was the next day or the day after, but anyway, they were looking down into that canyon, and sure enough, there he went. He had the elk carcass, and he was almost running. He was trotting along with this big load, and so maybe it was the 3rd time they kind of went down. I don't know if it was 1 person or 2 people, but they went down, and they spotted him, and so I guess they talked to him, and he said that he lived over there, and he kind of pointed over, and he said he was hunting for his parents, and so anyway, this boy, or this man, I don't know, he was probably maybe a teenager, but probably not a full-grown man. But anyway, they talked to him, and then they went back, and he went, and he went, and if you've ever been to Pryor, there's this rock. It's kind of around the cliff. It's just a total rock, and when he'd get there, he'd go right through. And they lived back in behind that rock, and that's where he grew up. And this was the boy that was lost. His parents, he told them, he told them that he talked to these people that looked and were as tall as me, and he said they wanted to know more about me, and he said I told them that I was a hunter for my family. And his father was very sad. He just kind of, he said, I knew that this day would come. He said, now that you've seen them, they saw you, you talked to them. He said, now you have to go back and join your people. That's your people that live down there. And he was raised by the little people. They gave him powers. They gave him so that he could lift whatever he wanted to lift, and so he eventually went back down, left his little family, and went back to join his family, and his parents were still there, and they had this reunion. It was a joyous reunion, but sad for his little people that raised him. They were very sad to see him go. That was one of the old stories. Those little people are still here. One of the